on data design is a recurring event series at the intersection of data and design and many more. And today you will see a super nice topic. Today's topic is sensory data design. And I'm excited to welcome three incredible speakers, who is Derry, Melinda Sipos, and Cristina Tarquini. Each speaker will have 20 minutes for the talks. Feel free to ask questions on Slido. The link is, you will find it below in the YouTube channel, or you got it probably also by email. I'm also hosting tonight from Basel, from our studio, Superdot Studio, and we have also other location joining in, who is, we have in Lucerne, joining the Bachelor in Data Design and Art. And we have in Barcelona, the domestic data streamers, and we have in Vienna, the University of Applied Arts at the Design Investigations Lab. And we have in Superdot also a crowd. So let me just show you, bring everybody on stage. So first, let me bring in the speakers. So who is Cristina? Cristina is here. For speaker one, we have Melinda, speaker two, and we have Linz on stage, the tonight's speakers. And as I promised, we have Vienna joining in. We have Barcelona with domestic data streamers. We have Superdot Studio in Basel. Great to have you all, guys. And we have in Lucerne the Bachelor Data Design and Art. So we will have now 1 hour of fun. And after this hour, we will then have discussions based on your questions that you asked in YouTube and on Slido. As I said, 20 minutes, and our first speaker for tonight, we go with alphabetical order, is Cristina. So Cristina, feel free to share your screen. The stage is yours for 20 minutes.
Hello, everybody. 1 second. So you should be able to see my screen right before I go full screen and I don't actually see you anymore. All right.
Yes.
So, hello, Darjan. Thank you very much for inviting me. My name is Cristina Tarquini, and please do jump in if, you know, like something is not working because I don't see you anymore.
Okay, good.
Cool. So I'm a freelance creative director and creative technologist. My work is quite varied, as you can see here. But the goal is always to create immersive experiences. Sometimes I work on physical interactive installations. Sometimes I create games. I've collaborated a lot with Nike, for example. Sometimes I do a website. I collaborated a lot with Google Arts and Culture, and we're going to cover this a little bit tonight. Some work that you do not see here, it's speculative work about the future of how AI is going to change the future of brands and their products and spaces, and it's all NDA locked, so unfortunately it doesn't make it online ever. But sometimes it's a bit more straightforward in terms of art installation aimed at, you know, kind of video or image driven. So it's all really fun project, but we are not going to talk about this today. We're going to do something a bit different. I grew up by the sea in a small region in the middle of Italy, and I always found the sea to be very fascinating. The more I swam in it, the more I discovered very strange creatures. And I believe that the ocean is mysterious because, as we see in this photo, with this mirror-like surface, we can't really see what's happening below. It's quite imperceptible from land. And also, it's quite hostile as an environment for us because we can't breathe because of the lack for water, the lack of air, and we can't really stand the pressure. So it's really quite alien almost. So over time, I spent quite a lot of time underwater. And the more I swam, the more I encounter really fascinating, amazing, bonkers, incredible creatures, but also environments. And so tonight, we're gonna, we're gonna go away from the desk for a moment, and we're gonna go into the sea for a creative underwater journey. So every start our dive, the first thing that we find is Posidonia. Posidonia that we see here is a seagrass that I photographed in Corsica, and it's quite special because it has some floating fruits that are also called the olives of the sea. And so these ribbon-like seagrass, they really create vast meadows that host, they provide shelter for a lot of marine life, but also absorb a lot of carbon dioxide and produce oxygen. In fact, they absorb 15 times more CO2 than the same sized Amazon forest, let's say. And a fun fact of this Posidonia is that underwater, it really kind of undulates and it has these very soft patterns where, moving with the current. And it really kind of gives you a sort of a feeling of euphoria, almost making you feel a bit drunk when you look at it. It's pretty special. But chilling on this Posidonia, we can find this little guy that is called a scorpion fish. So a scorpion fish can really blend almost perfectly with its environment, thanks to this pattern that they have on the skin and this skin formation, like almost this little beard that they have. So yeah, they can almost disappear and be really good at hunting. Another animal that is amazing in terms of patterns, and you might have to squint to see it, it's a pygmy seahorse. It's what you see in the center of this image. It's less than 2 centimeters long. It's the smallest seahorse species on the planet. And they really become, the way they look, it really becomes the coral they live on. I really hope you can see this, the little black eye in the middle. But as we continue the journey underwater, we really find the king of all patterns. This one is a giant cuttlefish that I encountered in the water of Raja Ampat at the very edge of Indonesia. And it's incredibly special because it's absolutely amazing at camouflaging. It has something called chromatophores on its skin, which is really acts like the pixel of your screen, basically. Each of these chromatophore can replicate, for example, the tree branch that's in the back of the image. But this is not the only thing that they're really amazing at doing. If you see the video on the top right, they create these amazing patterns almost of light, like almost washing light over their body, and they assume this weird posture. And what they're doing here, it's absolutely crazy. They're hypnotizing a crab. Being soft-bodied, crabs with their flyer, they can be quite dangerous. And so evolution decided that hypnosis was the way to go for them. And finally, we get to the species that's most special to me, my favorite, the jelly. So this one is a ctenophore, also called comb jelly. And over the 670 million years of evolution, they learned to adapt to become transparent. Imagine you have to hide in the middle of the sea in the blue, where there's no reef, no corals, nothing, and you just have to not be seen by the predators. And so through evolution, they became transparent. They're quite hard to find unless you go at night a bit deeper, where they also start to shine some light on their body. We can see there's some red and green dots on their body to kind of attract prey and soulmates. And this white dot at the center of the image is a Medusa, is a jellyfish that became a Medusa just a second ago. So jellyfish have a very unique life cycle. They start as polyps, which is something that lives attached to a hard surface, is really anchored. And then at some point in their life cycle, they literally take flight, start swimming, and become a jellyfish, a Medusa, which is what we call a jellyfish. And in the Mediterranean, there is a secret location where there is a type of jellyfish that is called immortal jellyfish, because it can literally live forever. In fact, if it's endangered, it can revert back to its polyp stage, revert time, and be reborn as a jellyfish after. Really, time doesn't affect them. But jellyfish have a lot of other impressive abilities. The box jellyfish, for example, is the most venomous in the world. There's one that's called the Eurocandis that is super small. You don't even feel it stings you, but then you don't really have many chances of survival. But there's a jellyfish that, for example, won a Nobel Prize for their fluorescence, and they've inspired all sorts of fields from genetics to robotics and so on. They really come in all sorts of forms, colors, sizes. And for me, I really think they're absolutely elegant and fascinating animal that have the most beautiful patterns. So you heard me saying this word patterns a few times, but it's not something just that touches the body of the jellies, but it's also something that is present in their environment. So we have two maps here. The one on the left is the one of hypoxia, which is represents areas in the Mediterranean that have low or no oxygen in the water, dispersed in the water. Whereas on the right, we have the one of jellyfish blooms that have been spotted and counted over time in the Mediterranean. But as we overimpose them, we can definitely see that there's something going on. There's a correlation. And in fact, over the years, I've seen jellyfish becoming more and more frequent. And I started to wonder if perhaps they could offer a visual clue to the changes that are happening in the seas. And in fact, could jellyfish blooms be nature's very own data visualization and perhaps be revealing hidden patterns in both the ocean health and the ecosystem balance? So this is how the project Medusa came about. Medusa is an interactive web experience that I created in collaboration with Google Arts and Culture. And it really tells the story of the Mediterranean through the lens of the jellyfish. So it's really about understanding what clues jellyfish populations can tell us about the changing climates of the Mediterranean, and also making the jellyfish the hero of the experience and not the bad guy like we kind of most likely often think. It's really a storytelling project that uses data from various entities like NOAA and the IUCN, which is the International Union for Conservation of Nature. And so I hope you can hear the audio. So this is a project that uses data to explore different effects, the rising temperature, overfishing, acidic waters, low oxygen, and the invasion of species are having in different hotspots of the Mediterranean. So first is about learning a little briefly about the jellyfish to bring some context, and choosing a topic to dive and explore. In fact, after it's about exploring. So you choose a location and discover more about the local climate problem, how it affects the environment, and the effects on jellyfish. It's a very simple, very direct, interactive experience online. So the research for this project is something that started from curiosity and continued with all the time that I spent underwater doing dives, but culminated with the collaboration with scientist Fabien Lombard from the Sorbonne University, the professor there. So together we unravel basically the fact that jellyfish really react differently to all the changes that are happening in the oceans compared to other fish species. In fact, they are the oldest animal on the planet. They've evolved over 670 million years ago. And through this time, they've really learned how to withstand even the harshest conditions. They're really marvelous animals. And so now we are on the first chapter of this experience, which is that of temperature increase. So these colored dots that you see on the left are representing a bloom. And this is a rough visualization, both of the size of the bloom, but also of the aesthetics of the jellyfish in consideration, which you can see on the top right. And so the choice of this kind of scattered dots was really through an artistic approach to make you feel almost as if you're drifting with the jellies in the water. But then the rest of the data is narrated in the info card. It was supposed to be a very explanatory project. And so in this case, for example, we are in 2017 on the Tunisian coast, and the temperature here is 2.5 degrees warmer. And the jellyfish, which is called Olidias phosphorica, has a bloom of more than 2,000 individuals. So water that become warmer, in general, on average, the Mediterranean is 1.5 degrees warmer, holds less water. And having less water, this affects the metabolism, the reproduction, and the behavior of all different marine species. But jellies, and you're going to hear me saying this quite a lot, are not really affected by this. They don't care so much. They prefer warmer waters, and in fact, this one can just cling on Posidonia during the day and then hunt and swim at night, undisturbed. For the second for the second chapter of the project, we get to the invasive species. In the Mediterranean, there's over 400 invasive species. And so with my team, we really played with the density of the point cloud to really give a sense of the pressure that these animals were giving. So there's darker spots, the points of the ocean, which is what you see in the background, are becoming smaller and less present. And in this case, we're in 2015 in Haifa Bay in Israel, and Marivaja stellata of course, is an invasive species. They came from the Suez Canal that, brought a lot of economical advantages, cutting time, but on a environmental level, it was quite controversial. In fact, species that came from the very poor Red Sea into the very rich Mediterranean really found, an untouched ground where they could simply flourish. And so the Marivaja stellata can feed on young local fish and endangering the local fauna. As we continue in the experiment, we are in that of the acidic waters. On average, the Mediterranean waters are 3% more acidic. And here, once again, we were playing with the oceans, with the appearance of the sea. You probably have seen or done a pH test in your life before, and the result is basically mapped on this little colored scale that goes from blue, green to red and yellow. And so that was the choice for the environment here. So we are in 2014 in the Aeolian Islands in Sicily, in Italy, which is a group of islands that are actually volcanoes in the middle of the sea. And in this area, the waters are, in some areas actually, are 170% more acidic. The volcanoes basically release a lot of CO2, which lowers the level of pH, and you can imagine water becomes more acidic, and therefore shells and harder skeletons have a hard time to form. They really start to dissolve. And of course, you can imagine, and this has devastating effects on the whole of the marine food chain. But the jellyfish that we see here, the Cotyloryza tuberculata, they have very complicated name oftentimes, that looks like a cracked egg, literally. Has a specific symbiotic relationship with the Zooxanthellae, which is a type of algae almost similar to the ones we find in coral, that basically lives within their skin. It captures the CO2, producing nutrients that dampen the effect of the acidification on the jellyfish. As we get towards the end, we have the chapter of low or no oxygen. Remember the map we saw at the very beginning. And in the Mediterranean, there's 59 areas of low or no oxygen, which is a huge number for such a small sea. It's 2017 and we're on the Greek coast, and here there's 2% less oxygen in the sea. I think during the pandemic, we all started to appreciate the importance of small numbers and the effect they could have. And Aurelia aurita, that we see here, has a bloom of more than 1,200 individuals. And as we mentioned at the beginning of this talk, because of the water warming up, basically the oxygen holds less, the water holds less oxygen, but also due to pollution, etc. The amount of oxygen diluted in the water starts to fall. And it's predicted that in 2100 it will be even less, almost 4% less. But Aurelia aurita, of course, doesn't really care so much. Not only doesn't care about the lack of oxygen, but also the combination of lack of oxygen, acidification, and higher temperatures. A fun fact about this jellyfish is that it's actually been to space. Scientists wanted to study how gravity affects their growth. Underwater gravity has a different pull. And so they send them to space at different stages in their life to see what would happen. And when they came back, they saw that they were actually a bit deformed, so the gravity really does have an effect. And finally, we get to the overfishing. So the Mediterranean Sea used to be called the cradle of life, but now it's the most overfished sea in the world. And in fact, once again, we wanted to play with the sea, and we wanted to create a sense of drama, having these particles almost disappear into nothingness. So it's 2015, we're on the Greek coast, and the stock of tuna has decreased by 90%. So Drymonema used to be a very rare jellyfish, but now is left unchecked and can bloom. So what eats jellies? It's of course animals like tuna or turtles or etc. But in general, there's 62% of fish stock depleted. So we're basically taking away all those animals that will keep them in check, keep the numbers of the jelly in check, and so they just go from rare to blooming. So this project has really taught me about the beauty and the fragility of the sea, and especially the collaboration with Fabien Lombard was really interesting, because I thought, and as we've seen also, that jellyfish are absolutely incredible, super powered animals. But if we continue at the pace of change that we're inflicting to the oceans, also them will eventually perish. And so it's really kind of taught me that hidden patterns can be easily spotted if someone paid attention. And that nature has its own very clever ways of doing things. And after this learning and understanding, and realizing that we only know 5% of the ocean, I want to show you my last experiment that in fact rotates all about the fact that we know a lot more of the stars and the space than the blue part of our blue planet. And so I started to wonder what undiscovered patterns might emerge from the ocean's depths. So what species, what ecosystem and systems are hidden below this mirror like we saw at the beginning. And so based on the photos that I've collected during my dives around the world, I've started a collaboration with a machine learning model to basically try to imagine this unknown aquatic life and really try to wonder if there is a machine that could help us discover new species, since oceanic exploration is so incredibly difficult. There's more than 2,000 species discovered every year. There's really so much we don't know. And so therefore, could technology help us unravel this unknown? And so during my dives, I've been making new friends. But are they real? Did evolution get in the way of our encounter? Or are they really out there? Imaginary tales of what could be? Or just a play of colors? What is and what could be? So thank you very much for coming with me in this a bit quirky underwater journey, and I hope this gives you the interest of going on an underwater adventure. Thank you. I am gonna stop.
Great.
Yes.
Thank you, Cristina. It was really, really nice. It was like having holidays. Super nice.
Yes, it was definitely refreshing.
Super. So let's go just to the next speaker, Linz. Thank you, Cristina. Linz, welcome. Let me hear if everything works and see if your screen share.
Let's find out. Okay.
Yeah. Here we go. Let me see. Yeah, there is something. Good.
Yes.
Looks good. So if you want, maybe you can do it full screen, or if it works also like this. Let's keep it just as it works. Cool.
I'm going to keep it like this for a moment.
Good.
To see some speaker notes, and then I'll switch to the screen.
Cool.
Awesome. I'm Linz Derry. I am a principal at metaLAB at Harvard, and also the artist in residence at the Maya Brin Institute for New Performance at the University of Maryland in College Park. Currently based in Washington, D.C. My background is in contemporary dance, choreography, and performance. And my passion area is looking at the intersection of dance, data representation, and more recently, AI. Great. So, a note on the title here. Toward a choreographic theory on the body as an information, thinking a lot about how choreography can help explain the body in its ability to mediate data. And I'm going to first introduce some of these theoretical ideas and then share with you 3 projects that bring them to life. So, my current research examines the body data relationship from the interdisciplinary perspective of the performance arts, data representation, and artificial intelligence. I'm deeply curious about how performative bodies can become information mediums via choreographic operations, whether to make abstract data more sensorial and hence communicative as performance, or embodied data more legible and hence transferable to AI and other information systems. Relatedly, I'm interested in how the body medium is complicated by the subjective dweller who may affect the outcomes or very constitution of the data they are physically mediating. This presentation presents these early thoughts. The body is an information medium. It can be encoded.
Sorry to interrupt. Could you try and maybe press the play button? Because we see also below the notes. Sorry.
Oh.
Yeah, or just kind of make the screen bigger. Let's try. What happens if you
Yes.
press the play button? Just a technical thing. Yes, wonderful.
Concern. Yes, although then I lose my ability to see notes here.
Okay. If it doesn't work, then keep it as it was. Sorry, I was just saying that we were seeing.
No, thank you. I will be going off script here once I get to the projects, but want to be sure to present these concepts clearly. So the body is an information medium. It can be encoded to represent data or decoded as constituting data. It can even transfigure data through its embodied interactions. From a choreographic perspective, an example of encoding data would be producing a movement score for dancing row by row a data set, as seen in my work Data Sensorium with metaLAB at Harvard. An example of decoding data would be establishing certain classes of movement for other people or computer to interpret what a dancer is doing, as seen in William Forsythe, Improvisation Technologies, a tool for the analytical dance eye. And lastly, an example of transfiguring data would be to use generative AI, for example, to morph a dance video or text into something uncanny, as seen in Lauren Bedell's many experimental Instagram sketches. Catalyzing these processes of encoding, decoding, and transfiguring data is choreography, which extends both to the perception of and structuring of aesthetic cultural movement. Thus, my research on the body data relationship in art is anchored to choreography. Terrific. So from this perspective, I research how data flow to/from the body via processes that either translate them to the body as choreographic inscriptions for performance or abstract them from the body via classification systems reliant on a kind of choreographic seeing. From either vantage, I'm interested in how the self-aware mover can alter the understanding or outcomes of that data through their interactions or performance. More broadly, my research asks, given our physical indivisibility from our data-driven world, how can somatic practices like dance and choreographic theory help us to navigate the complex information we encounter, as well as the issues that it produces, like bias in AI? To support these inquiries, I've begun to analyze multiple examples, which I am now clumping into the following categories: encodings, with reference to choreographing and performing abstract data sets; decodings, with reference to interpreting embodied movement via its classification; and transfigurations with reference to shifting data outputs via performative interactions with AI or other information systems. A rich terrain for understanding the body-data relationship that positions choreography or its theory as a binding force. And now I will gladly go into full screen. So thank you for your patience as I read through text that I had prepared, really wanting to express these ideas of encoding, decoding, and transfigurations with accuracy. The first project I want to show is Data Sensorium, Environmental Migration 1. This is a project that I developed at metaLAB at Harvard with the following collaborators. Began the project curious about how a data set might be choreographed in a similar fashion to how a data set is translated into a data visualization. And the first step in the project was to decide what data set to choreograph. Decided on working with an environmental migration data set that looks at how populations are internally displaced within their territories or countries due to environmental disasters like volcanoes, earthquakes, droughts. And with a background in design.
Blood. 4.
With a background in design, I began by first analyzing the data and preparing the data to be translated both into visualizations, which was a part of more of the thinking process of what to do with them, to eventually find the form of a movement score. And then here is a video excerpt showing how the data visualization dashboard helped support the coming together of a movement score that's performed by Isabel Edgar. And I'm reading the movement score as a voiceover. Let's see.
Blood. 4. 3. 2. 1. 5. 4. 3. 2. 1. Earthquake. 2. 1. 5. 4. 3. 2. 1. Storm. 3. 2. 1. 4. 3. 2. 1. Mass movement. 2. 1. 4. 3. 2. 1. Wildfire. 2. 1. 2. 1.
Great. So thought I would just jump in by showing the example because it allows me to speak to it a lot more easily. But essentially, the movement score allowed Isabel to dance row by row a simplified data set that relied on a lot of logarithmic value translations, since performing a gesture for flood 2,000 times isn't feasible for a dancer. And what we did is we came up with gestures for each disaster type, like flood, volcano, and then we used the simple steps forward to connect with how many people were displaced or had to move because of the disaster. And it was truly that simple. What we did next was take artistic liberties, thinking what's the value of choreography here in performing a data set is to be able to make these artistic decisions that may convey data in a more emotional or textual manner. And you'll see our choreographic discovery on on beginning with this simple movement score and then pulling it out into making greater and greater artistic choices. Hopefully you were able to see that. I know sometimes videos can be quite glitchy during streaming. These videos... Oh, good. Okay, great. The next project actually predates Data Sensorium, and this was the development of a choreographic interface, which was essentially a gestural interface using machine vision and AI to read a set of choreographed gestures for interacting with screen-based projects here at the Harvard Art Museum's Lightbox Gallery. And I see this project both as one of decoding, because it requires a classification system to decode the body's data, which are the choreographed movements. And it also is an example of transfigurations, because once active, it allows a person to use embodied movement to engage with data visualization, or the Harvard Art Museum's database here, to transfigure the data and the view of them. To develop the vocabulary went through quite an iterative process that actually began with looking at accessibility, considering what different bodies can do in a public space. This led to thinking through a bimanual, unimanual, and head control system for doing the simple interactions that we needed to do, such as zoom in, zoom out, select, and so on. Next was an iterative process with machine learning to actually see how choreographed movement might be able to be interpreted or learned by AI. This was actually far more complicated than anticipated because of the slight similarities of gestures needing to be reworked to be more dissimilar for the system to see them as distinct. Here's the prototype at the Harvard Art Museum's Lightbox Gallery, and interacting with a data visualization called Surprise Machines. Oh, I should have mentioned the choreographic interface was only an aspect of a greater project at metaLAB at Harvard called Curatorial Agents, and Curatorial Agents was an exhibition featuring several different projects. And here's a video of the choreographic interface interacting with those projects that are all drawing from the Harvard Art Museum's Digital Collections API. Great. And for the sake of time, I'm going to move forward to my final project that is very much a work in progress. I'm so excited about this. The simple premise is using a twister board as a way for people to perform their personal data or survey answers in a public setting. And I only have a few images, which I'll leave up while I talk about the project. So inspired by participatory art, let's see, let me explain the board first. We set up the board, and this is research taking place at the University of Maryland. These are MFA in dance choreography students here. The twister board is set up to represent a simple survey where red is strongly disagree, blue is somewhat disagree, yellow is somewhat agree, and green is strongly agree. Yes, and so when the dial is spun, the twister dial is spun and lands on right foot, the participants will hear a statement, which they all, okay. The participants will hear a statement such as gender is a matter of biology, and they will then have to move their right foot to the colored dot that matches their level of agreement with the statement. Really excited about this project because it allows game, the idea of a game, the idea of movement to be the base for exploring agreement and disagreement in a public setting through embodiment, and have a lot of hope for the project. I'm envisioning creating an augmented board so that a sonification of the ways people come together and harmonize in their answers or move apart and create dissonance. I think the sonification could be really rich for this. Something to draw your attention to is the bottom right image where those two bodies are actually matching. I see this moment as a data sculpture, or in a way, an embodied data sculpture. The fact that these two participants were able to find symmetry in their bodies meant that they had to answer 4 statements in the same way. They had to find the same level agreement of 4 statements, which allowed them to move their left foot, their right foot, their left hand, their right hand to these matching positions. And with all that adrenaline, I actually have wrapped exactly on time at 20 minutes. So hopefully that was clear.
Amazing. It all worked. All the videos worked, the sound worked, everything. Fantastic. Fantastic. Thank you so much. So now Just a reminder for everyone, please don't forget to ask the questions on Slido and also upvote the questions you want to have answered afterwards by the speakers in the discussion round. And now the last speaker, thank you, Linz, our last speaker, Melinda. Are you ready to share your screen?
Yes, hello.
Hello.
I'm trying to share my
Let's
screen.
see. Yes. Let's see if it works.
Okay.
Short advertisement. If anybody wants, please, if you like the videos, just like them on YouTube. It helps. Okay. Yes, I see Melinda. Yes.
Okay. And
okay.
So I go
now
here
you go.
to special settings.
Exactly. Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Presentation.
Sorry, my laptop is a bit old.
It works. We see your slide. Full screen.
Only my slide?
Yeah, we see only your slide. No notes or anything.
This is fantastic.
Yes, it is fantastic. So you can start. Yes, looks good.
Okay.
The stage is yours.
Okay. So you are seeing my first slide because I can't see you.
Data-based artworks.
Okay.
Yes, we see an entrance hall.
Okay, so hi everyone. I'm a bit stressed because of these technical things, but we got through it and you can see my works. So I'm an artist and designer specialized in creating data-based artworks. And so I work on self-initiated projects as well as commissions. I also work with a small creative technology team on a daily basis. But tonight I'm going to talk about some database artworks of mine that are most characteristic to my practice. And so the first one is called Almost Everyone. That is a crucial point. That was a crucial point in my journey in data visualization. That it was right after my kids were born. I started my doctoral studies in Budapest at the Moholy-Nagy University of Art and Design. And so this is when I started also to focus on data physicalization as an artistic tool and started my own path. And this was the first project that was especially addressed data physicalization simultaneously or aiming at communicating a social topic that was interesting to me. And my context, or because of my context as a French mother, I turned my attention to the situation of childbirth in Hungary, which was I previously confronted as a mother, as I mentioned. And so I learned that the number of interventions during labor is very high in Hungary. And I consulted midwives and my doctor and other activists in the area, and so I had to learn that these interventions are really high, and I collected data from between 2012 and 2016, and so what I came about at the end was an aggregated number of the episiotomy and C-section rates, which are both very high and both are cut-based interventions. And that amounts up to 77% of all delivery in Hungary between these times. So my aim was to represent this situation, and the idea of using a stick came from our walks with my son, who used to collect those sticks, and so those branches. And the installation title is Almost Everyone, because I wanted to highlight the fact that the majority of women who give birth has this wound, which is invisible to the society. And I found the quick tie a very, very strong sign to represent this wound women bear, and which is actually not visible. So I wanted to make it very visible. And when you entered the space and looked at the installation, you could have this experience or impression that all branches, all twigs are equipped with this quick ties to explicitly say that almost all women are affected. And so I like this last shot of the installation with my kids, who are, of course, much bigger now. And then I can now jump to a new project. And also, it was a big step for me. A couple of years passed since I did Almost Everyone. I was awarded a Fulbright scholarship, which I spent in Boston at the Budapest Lab, Network Science Institute. And so this was the first time for me in a science lab. And since being in a science research lab was new to me, I spent my early days talking to everyone around me about their background and actual project. Also started to audit an introductory course to network science. And so somehow this idea born into my mind that what if I try to visualize the network of a network science lab? And so I started to take notes and question the people around me, as I mentioned. And then I realized that my method so far is not exactly suitable for a network visualization, or not exactly the way how network scientists work. So I learned from my colleagues, and with the kind assistance of some of them, I collected data with the help of an appropriate script, and then I turned them into finally I turned them into real networks. And I was not only curious of the networks, but also the nodes, so the people and how their relations are within the lab. So my interest was about their work relations and social relations, and whether they have both with some colleagues. And so in parallel of this whole research, I also started to test different materials, how I could represent this desktop-based visualization in my own ways. And so I finally, the piece I built was made out of very simple and nice materials, paper and basaltry. And also I have to explain that what I learned in the course of the project was that I have to make the consideration which aspect of the network visualization I'm gonna show. And the final piece I built there in Boston, I focused on, in the network, so I used, if two people at the lab are both connected work-related and socially as well, I represent the stronger connection between them. And so here you can see some shots of how I made up all the nodes, and sometimes I asked the persons represented to make their own nodes. So you can see a friend, Daria, who is a fantastic graphic designer at the lab, and she also built her own node, which I could include in this site-specific installation. Here you can see the final network. And so the brown paper, just to add, represents the social connection between people, and the white represents the work connection. And you could see previously Daria Koshkina, and interestingly, a couple months later, when we talked to each other on the phone, she made me realize that I often represent or work on pieces that are around people or problems that are somehow related to people. And this is also true for these recent projects from this spring. This project is called 4960/360, and this project was realized in Budapest, but it also roots back to Boston, where I met an artist, a historian called Alexandra M. Szabo. And so she is part of an interdisciplinary research team called Digital Lens. She's not on the photo, but some of the members are. And they conducted the research on the early testimonies of Hungarian Jewish Holocaust survivors taken by volunteers right after they arrived back to Budapest. And so besides the scientific papers and their findings on the deportation routes, they concluded this research in the framework of an exhibition, and I was asked to join in with an artistic contribution. And I did this. I have to mention that I participated this project also because my grandmother was a survivor. So the installation I created is based on the unprocessable proportion of survivors and people who died during the deportation and in concentration camps. So I took the data of her hometown in Hungary, the number of people in the Jewish community in Sátoraljaújhely, a relatively small town, before the Holocaust and after the Second World War. And so what you can see is that the longer threads represent the people who survived, and the so many shorter threads represent all the people who died, and some other shots. And the last bit of the second half of my talk, I'm gonna tell about two projects. I've spent hundreds of hours, literally, in the last couple of years. This project was developed in a duo, so I worked with another artist called Mátyás Husz, and it was a commissioned work by the Museum of Ethnography in Budapest, and part of their new permanent exhibition that was inaugurated actually a little more than 1 month ago. So we came up with the idea of building a physical diagram to represent the growth of the museum collection in over 150 years. And what you can see here is that the smaller ring represents the growth of the object collection, about 250,000 objects, and the taller ring shows the archive collection with 600,000 of items. And the vertical poles hold the sculpture, but also represent important points in the story of the museum. And the bases, what you can see, I will show you photos of the actual sculpture. Just it's worth to explain in advance that so the basis also represents data. It's the different venues of the museum from these 150 years. And so for the diagram, we learned that there is no such data set at the museum that would summarize the growth. So we have to build it. We had to build it ourselves, and we came up with a kind of big data set. And so I will show you some photos of the actual sculpture, like how we built the diagram by hand, each piece. These are the pieces or the slides of the diagram. Sorry, and then how we mix the color painting to cover the slides, because I have to also tell that it's oil painted, so we painted each slides with oil, and then we carved lines in the colors to represent the objects themselves. So one line is about 100 objects. And here you can see the final sculpture, which is quite big. So the tallest point is 4 meters high. And this is the archive side, because it has, as you have seen it, it has two sides. So this is the gray is the archive side, and then the little labels explains the pose, like what happened in certain times of the museum's life. Another shot from the archive point of view. And from close-up, you can see the lines and how the structure is set up. And then this is the object collection, which with so many object collection within the big collection. So the colors represent different sub-collections like furniture or Asia or Indonesia and so on. And it's one of my favorite shot, a close-up from the sub-collections and the lines. And so while this other piece was concentrating on the whole collection, or the collection as a whole, this other piece on the wall, we built on the wall, is focusing on the object, where each oak element represents an artifact, and their measurements, I mean the oak elements measurements, reflects their pre and museum life. So the taller the element, the longer it has been in the museum, and while the shadow represent the age of the objects. This is a shot when we prepared the oak elements, polished them, and soothed it in oil, and this is how it looks like on the wall. And this is also enhanced with the projection. So in the middle there is an area to project, where there is a preset series of questions that ask things about the museum collection, and also with the lights, the questions are answered, and they light up several objects that are related to the question, or that are the answer to the question. And so there are generic questions, and also we go into details and more specific questions, and we arrive to one specific objects, and then we can also see with the drawing these objects. I don't know how many minutes I do have yet, but so this is a piece that combines physicalization but also digital technology or projection. And the last thing I wanted to show is a very recent and playful small project I made for the IDC conference in Hilversum, early October. So basically I played with colors and lights, and I was asked to make this pop-up visualization for the conference day, and I decided to represent the visitors, like the attendees, their backgrounds and their expertise. So I asked them to select a color that represents their background, for example, designer or data scientist or someone from the public sector. And so they all put their circles on this board. And then finally, we arrived to a kind of nice and simple visualization of the attendees' background, and the whole like a panorama or an overview of the attendees. So this is all I wanted to share with you tonight. Thank you for your attention. Sorry for this coughing issue. And I'm gonna finish here.
It worked perfect. Thank you, Melinda. So we're coming to the discussion round. We have all the speakers successfully finished with the videos and the audio. Everything worked perfectly. Thank you so much. I can even see there are a lot of questions. If somebody feels like you didn't ask your question, please do that. We will have now plus minus 30 minutes to discuss. I would like, I have seen some patterns in the question. Maybe one part of it, I would say it fits to all of you. So I would like to ask a question regarding the body, right? So you talk about experience, about movement, about Melinda did the sculptures in space. So what does it mean? What experiences did you make? Also, Cristina, I know it from your other work, which is also 3D in store and so on. So what experiences did you make? What benefits or kind of difference do people have when they have this three-dimensional space experience versus maybe website or a print or something? Because you all are in this area. So tell me a little bit about the experience with that.
I can start.
Yes, please.
Cool. As you mentioned, generally I also do sort of interactive installations and stuff, and especially I love working on games, but games not necessarily like something that you do at your PlayStation or something, but yeah, all sorts of interactive that has a little bit of a goal, and has a bit of a fun kind of steps to it. And basically I see a lot of people just jumping in and sometimes very skeptical or sometimes really not really knowing what's about to happen, and then everything change when they start playing, they start kind of interacting. And I think this physicality unravels a sense of humanity and as like a roller coaster of emotion that adds so much to the whole experience that, for example, on a website you wouldn't necessarily take it in. It's a bit more of a passive thing. And so I think now I lost track of the question, but I think when you have sort of emotional roller coaster, there's so much that gets added, and it creates a whole different universe for the project.
I get it. Playful emotions. I see that.
Yeah, I'll jump in because
mine
is in a bit of a response to Melinda's amazing work. And I was observing, and it made me also think of my own process on how the value of having to slow down a lot in order to imagining Melinda's last one of drawing a line, and that slowing down when you're dealing with something like data that can be computationally processed so fast, but actually slowing it down for the body to process. As I mentioned, like Isabel, the dancer of data sensorium, couldn't do 2,000 gestures to represent flood, but she could do 5. But even that logarithmic value of 5, what it took for her to embody it required time. And then it also compounded with physical effort. And then the physical effort created a real experience, in this case, of the population being displaced or people moving, and being able to have that physical empathy of moving the body through space, which was very particular to the data set. But I think just this interesting idea of how embodiment can slow down an otherwise incredibly fast world when thinking about data and computational processing of them.
Yeah. Melinda?
Yeah, maybe one thing I could add is that being there physically and almost touching something creates this really, how to say, like immediate response, which we are not conscious about, like all the things we know already about certain materials, colors, sizes, and everything. So they start to function immediately when you go closer and you want to touch it, or just they communicate with you in another level. And it's so interesting, like how it determines our understanding of things, like it's an extra level of information.
Yeah. I would actually just jump into another question, which was directed to Linz, but actually it's also a question regarding body. Also, the exhibition Melinda does Linz. The question is asking: did you analyze how viewers interpret the data which is presented by choreography and dance? So it's always a question of evaluation, and also evaluation of exhibitions and of stores and games and so on. So how is there an evaluation process? You're on mute. Sorry.
Yes.
You can keep it on. Yeah.
Sure. I would say a part of the struggle in the data sensorium work is that it either would require an introduction as to how to think through the workings of that movement score. Otherwise, it just needed to be presented as an aesthetic experience. So that's a part of that revelation of wanting to do the new Twister game, which was like how to bring people into a direct kinesthetic experience of, in many ways, they're performing and creating their own data set as they move through the various statements that they have to agree or disagree with. Because I think it's difficult for especially a time-based art form, if you're not trained as a choreographer or dancer, to be able to even hold like what the moves were before. So if anything, I think they could feel like the exhaustion of Isabelle as she did so many gestures or that sort of stuff is palpable. The emotional resonance of Isabelle's performance is palpable to the audience, and then the aesthetic impression overall.
Yeah. And is there, just because the Twister project, which I really love, because you did photographs, right? You documented certain kind of time and place kind of people when they had like this crazy movement overlapping and so on. So there is still kind of one capturing, right, of that moment and of that. Yeah. And then I imagine that that's kind of an answer to something, or kind of one data point where these bodies are like looking crazy.
Yeah, I like to think of them as these momentary data sculptors, but exactly. They're very much dance driven or in their formation. And so I think in this also, I'm happy you brought that up. I think this new project will allow both for a direct experience, but there's also going to be this audience level where the audience can now see these manifestations right before them. And especially if it ends up being augmented and extended into sound or like projected visualizations.
Wow, cool.
Yep.
Cool. Cristina, you were the first one. There were questions people asking, okay, the project that you have shown seems to be something you came up with, like a self-initiated idea, and then kind of how people are asking for the background. What was your role, or did you kind of from the idea did you find scientists to collaborate with them and developers? Like, how does that look like?
So basically it started, well, I did another project with Google Arts and Culture before, which was about the acidification of the oceans, still data-driven and still an interactive website. And they really enjoyed the collaboration. So then they asked me, do you have a quirky idea of another project that we could do? And I was like, I do.
Okay, cool.
Awkward hobby for jellyfish. And so, and it was something that, it was just a personal fascination. And then, it kind of started growing a little bit. And throughout time, like over the years on the side, I had this sort of, little discoveries. One of them, for example, was one of the map overlapping. And so this is how the project came about. I pitched it. I got the funding basically, and so then I ran the project. Like I found the team, and it was a very small team. We had just a developer, like a web developer, a sound designer, and then I was doing all the R&D and the design and the storyline. And then the scientist was found because of the previous project as well. It was so for Google, it's always a requirement, because every time you rephrase something, you have to make sure that you're rephrasing correctly. So you can't just, like you have to be super, super accurate with whatever you say. And so on the previous project, I had found a scientist, and then I just asked for a colleague, and we found him. And so, so that was it was an interesting, basically from a past experience, I met some people, and then I had this weird hobby, and then asking around, you just find budget to make it happen.
Wonderful. Okay, that's
Always
inspiring.
have weird hobbies.
Wow, super. Melinda, you had projects and residencies, but it was like the residencies were there, you created the idea, you applied for residencies, and then you make the exhibition, or was it the other way around? So the Boston, you were in Boston, right?
Actually, I made it as a residency, to be
Okay.
honest, because it was a Fulbright. So it's a scholarship. I applied for the scholarship. I won the scholarship, and I explained my research as part
Yeah.
of my doctoral studies. And upon arrival, when I saw that this is kind of a serious science lab, there are works related to data physicalization, but not so much. It was not an art space, even though artistic work happened there. And so I set up this time for me as kind of being in a residency. I try to join in the lab's work, but also focusing on my own work and also to learn new things. So
Yeah.
it's a combination of, or how to say, kind of a little hack.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean,
Always good to know.
no, because it's easier to be on Fulbright when you're an artist. You have more freedom.
Yeah.
And I could use this freedom for really discovering new things.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I ask these questions because obviously there's very often the question, okay, of business model on kind of how can you start from an idea? Do you need first a grant to make the idea? Do you need first a client to make the idea? So this kind of intersection, or kind of how does it work? What kind of fields do exist for people working in the field of data and other disciplines? So that's why I'm asking.
No, but it's a tough thing otherwise. So
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It is a tough thing. I understand. Yeah. Something to add? Otherwise, no. Okay. Because you said something, Melinda, just because you said the word data physicalization. There was a question on. It was directed to Linz, asking, because in the videos there was also sound. So kind of people, I think Isabel was dancing and there was sound in the background. Was the sound data sonification? Was the sound also data based on the dance? Or was it kind of a different, like, how would you say? Maybe you can help me out. It's kind of the question of, yeah.
That wasn't the music that was chosen for the performance, was just to support the performance.
Exactly. That was the
However,
word.
I did forget to comment that since that choreographic interface preceded, we did adapt the interface so that it could read the different disaster type gestures. And the choreographic interface for the museum had sonification. So it very much did have the capability to have connected, for instance, the disaster gestures into sonification, should we have had more time and resources. But for the twister board, I can't help but think the sonification is the right mode for that, because you have the different columns and you can just see how sound that would either create harmony when you have more of the same colors pressed versus different ones, which would create dissonant sound. I just think it would work really well with supporting also the movers, and the participants from inside can then hear kind of what's happening inside, since they can't really see, especially if they're getting super twisted, how much they are right in sync or out of sync. So is a question on my mind, maybe is the long-winded answer. Oh, and to the random comment on this idea of data physicalization, I like to think of what I'm doing as data embodiment or data kinesthetics. I have a feeling kinesthetics has been landing more for me lately, because it really refers to kinetic movement and kinesthetic learning and experience.
Yeah, that's good. Makes sense. you just said something, Linz, regarding gestures. There is an interesting question because there has been a hype on gesture control things with Leap Motion 10 years ago. Do you have the feeling that, I'm just looking for the question, sorry, I'm scrolling through the question as I answered, yeah. Do you see gesture control of screens, devices becoming more important in the future again? Yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the way we're able to use voice now in order to access our information systems more immediately, I can absolutely see gesture as a way to be able to interact and move through an experience. So I wouldn't be surprised if our systems can become more sensitive. I know, for instance, Google with they were investigating this Soli radar, which was looking at gesture and choreographed movement to interact with the phone from a reasonable distance.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And is there, okay, now I'm closing because there's kind of the one question is always coming up, and that is on coding and technology and kind of what technology is used. So the question is also for Lindsay, technology-wise gesture control, and also for Cristina. There has also been the question, what kind of technology has been used for your website? Maybe just in short, it's kind of always repeating question. People always want to know in the backgrounds and the technology which is behind. Melinda, I know it's the hands, and I saw Excel, Excel in Word. Yeah.
I know.
I use Cristina first.
Yeah.
Yes, so the website was made in WebGL, but all the R&D was done in a software called VVVV, which is similar to Touch Designer, so it's like node-based coding. And the sonification, because as part of that, was done in MaxMSP, but then eventually just exported audio and brought it back into there. And a lot of design and references and mood boards and try to describe things as you want them, especially when they're so small. Yeah.
Cool.
Great.
Yeah.
Was a question for me for the choreographic interface, do you think?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're like a technological connection, the interface.
Sure. I would say people who are interested, do reach out. We have all the code up on my GitHub repository, which is open with a tutorial sort of language in there. We also have a paper that I co-wrote with the collaborators on the choreographic interface that talks through our process for building it. And I say that because in a nutshell, we went through many different just open source AI machine learning models that looked at pose recognition, and we did a lot of hacks and combining, and latency was a huge problem that we had to overcome. So would point people to those resources more than trying to unpack all the different layers that we ended up using.
Cool. Very cool. Melinda, you were saying, sorry, you were starting to say regarding Excel or something you said. Want to say?
Yeah, I know. I'm just wanting to add that I do use all kinds of new technologies. But it's true that I like to work analog, or there is an interesting contrast. Yeah.
Cool. No, all good. All good. Do you have any kind of question or anything you want to add? Otherwise, we can slowly close today's session. Anything? No? Okay. Good. So I would like to thank you that you joined. Thank everyone. Thank the locations who joined: Vienna, Lucerne, Basel, and all the other places. I enjoyed it a lot today. So if somebody likes this video or what we are doing, please support us. That helps a lot. I'm looking forward for the next session. Please, speakers, stay here. I will just close now the live stream and say goodbye to everyone. Thank you for joining. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.